Okay, so today I want to do a review of um, balance of payments accounts and exchange rates. So just to remind us, balance of payments accounts has the current account and the financial, or sometimes called the capital account. Okay, and the current account tracks, both of them, the current account and the financial account, track the movement of money across countries. Okay, so when money is moving into a country, that's a plus, that's an increase in the current accounts. In both accounts. When money is coming in, it's an increase. When money is leaving, it's a decrease. Okay. The current account tracks any changes, any movement of money as a result of buying of goods and services. Okay. As a result of factor income, as a result of transfers. Okay, so what do we mean by that? Let's say that, so for the current account, okay, if I export a good or a service, I am sending the good or service abroad, I'm getting paid, so that's a plus in the current account. If I import a good or service, I'm buying from them, I'm paying them, so the money is going there, so that's a negative in the current account. Factor income is basically interest income, or that's the true definition, profits, but I'm going to describe it more simply as, even though it's not completely accurate, it's actually not accurate, but I think it's easier to understand if you say that factor income is like if a worker works abroad, the money comes back here, right? So that would be a plus. If foreign workers work here, they send the money home, that would be a minus. Okay? So let's think of factor income and transfers that way. Okay? If we're transferring money abroad, that's a minus. If another country is transferring money here, that's a plus. Okay, so these are the changes in the current account. And in the financial account, it tracks what's happening with assets, the buying and selling of assets, either by governments, so that would be official changes in the financial account, or by private parties, by people. Okay, if I go and buy a stock in the European stock market, that's a private transaction. Since my money is leaving my country, that's a negative in the financial account. If foreigners buy stock in the US market, that's a plus in the financial account. Also, any kind of investment you undertake in another country, that would be a minus. Any kind of investment foreigners make here, that's a plus. Okay? We said in general the rule is that the capital account equals to minus the financial account, or if you add the capital account to the financial account, they should equal to 0. Okay? The logic is, let's say that I export stuff. Okay? So in order for the people, let's say I want to say exports $100. So somebody wants to buy $100 worth of American goods. In order to do that, they would have to change their money into dollars so that they can buy and pay for the $100 in exports. Okay? So when they bought dollars, they had to sell euros. So somebody had to buy euros in order for them to buy dollars so that they could buy this pocketbook, let's say. Okay, it's an American pocketbook. It's $100. In order for the French person to come and buy this pocketbook, they have to sell $100 worth of euros to somebody who's willing to give them $100 for it so that they could buy this pocketbook. Now, the person who was willing to buy the $100 worth of euros from the Frenchman, okay, they have to somehow, what are they going to do with the euros? Either they will spend it in Europe. So let's say they go and buy, goods in Europe. That would be an import of $100 worth, right? Because realize, by the way, if you're a European person, you have euros. If you're American, you have dollars. So the person who has to give, the person who's buying euros to exchange dollars is an American person, okay? So the American person who bought the euros off of the French guy either will import 100 euros or $100 worth of euros off of it, so that balances out, or they will buy assets worth $100 from the European, from the Frenchman, from the French economy, okay? The point is that either of these transactions will offset this transaction, and that's why we're saying that what's happening in the capital account has to offset what happens in the financial account. So if the capital account brings money into the U.S. economy, the financial account has to be money leaving the country in the financial account to balance it out. Okay. So the second thing we spoke about where it comes to balance of payments accounts is that if you look at the loanable funds market, here's loanable funds, and this is the real interest rate. So we have a demand for loanable funds, we have a supply of loanable funds, okay? So suppose that in one country, the real interest rate is 5%. And in another country, so let's say in the US and in Europe, the loanable funds market is such that the real interest rate is 2%, okay? We said money will always flow to the country with the higher interest rates. So in other words, at 5%, there is excess supply, right? This is the quantity supplied of loanable funds in Europe. This is the quantity demanded. So there is excess supply of loanable funds in Europe at 5%. So the Europeans will send that capital to the US, and that will increase the supply of loanable funds and drive the interest rate down, okay? Whichever country has the higher interest rate, money will flow to that country, okay? All right, the next item we wanted to clarify was with exchange rates, okay? So we have two types of exchange rates. We have nominal exchange rates, and we have real exchange rates. Nominal exchange rates is just how many foreign currency can I get per dollar, okay? Real exchange rates is in terms of goods. How many apples can I get in Europe in exchange for one apple in the US? Okay, so, and again, this is consistent. This is consistent with what we said with nominal and real GDP. Nominal did not take into account inflation, real GDP was saying it took into account, it corrected for the effect of inflation. Or when we said nominal versus real wages, right? Nominal wages is how much you get, what's your salary. Real wages is how much can your salary buy in goods, right? So nominal and real exchange rates, one is in currency, one is in goods, okay? So with nominal exchange rates, it's always foreign currency per domestic currency. So if you are the dollar, then it would be foreign currency per dollar. If you are the euro, it would be foreign currency per euro, okay? If you are in Japan, it would be foreign currency per yen, okay? And so we say that's little e, that's foreign currency per domestic currency, okay? And when the domestic currency can purchase more foreign currency, so when the nominal exchange rate increases, we call that an appreciation, which means that, so for example, if you can get more foreign currency for each dollar you have, that's an increase in value. Okay? And if the exchange rate falls, we call that a depreciation. Okay, that's a decrease in value. Okay? Similarly with real exchange rates, if each American apple can purchase more apples in Mexico, that means that the value of the American apple has increased and the real exchange rate has appreciated. If the American apple can buy fewer apples in Mexico than it used to, then the American currency has depreciated in real terms. Okay? So we can see it, okay? And I want to remind you, this is not just for dollars, right? So we can actually do this example. Say that we are in, Japan, okay? So it would be the yen, the Japanese yen, and the exchange rate would be foreign currency per yen, okay? So there would be a demand for yen and a supply of yen. Okay, and when the value of the yen increases, that's an appreciation. That means each yen can buy more and more foreign currency. So moving in the upward direction is an appreciation. Okay, all right. We said the supply of currency comes from Japanese people who want to buy foreign goods or foreign assets, okay? And the demand comes from foreigners who want to buy Japanese goods and or assets. Okay, so let's see what would happen to the exchange rate for yen if interest rates in real interest rates in the US go up and interest rate in Japan stays constant. Okay, So that means that relative to the US has higher interest rates, Japan has lower interest rates relative to the US. So that means that we said there's going to be money leaving Japan to go and invest in the US. Okay? If there's money leaving Japan to go to the US, that means that Japanese people will want to sell their yen so that they could buy dollars so that they can invest in the US and get the higher interest rate. Okay? Also, if the interest rate is higher in the US, foreigners are not going to want to buy Japanese assets anymore, right? Because they'd rather go and invest in the US, which has the higher interest rate. So the demand for Japanese assets goes down as well. So as a result, the yen will depreciate. Okay? Let's do another scenario. Okay? Okay. Suppose we're still in Japan. And so we have the yen. And the exchange rate is dollars per yen. Okay? Here's the demand. Here's the supply of yen. Okay? If the interest rate in Japan increases relative to the rest of the world, so Japanese people are not going to want to leave Japan. In fact, they're going to bring in whatever money they had abroad, they're going to bring it back to Japan. So the supply of yen will shrink. And more foreigners want to go and invest in Japan, so the demand for yen will increase. As a result, the yen will appreciate. Okay? So, in general, let's do this for, suppose we are in the US. So now over here we have dollars, and let's say we're talking about euros per dollar. Okay, it always has to be relative to some other currency. Okay, so if if the country becomes more attractive to invest in, okay, then the supply is going to shrink. So this is US becomes attractive to invest in, okay, the supply is going to go down because Americans bring their dollars home. They don't want to sell their dollars anymore. They want to buy dollars, okay? And the demand will also increase because foreigners are going to want to buy American investments, okay? On the other hand, if the US becomes less attractive, okay, so then Americans will sell their dollars in order to buy other currencies to invest in other countries, and foreigners would want to are less interested in investing in the US, so the demand for US dollars goes down, and that causes the dollar to depreciate. Okay, so this is how the balance of payments ties in with the exchange rate market. Okay. Okay, so what's the implication for monetary policy? Okay, so let's say you have the US economy. Here's aggregate demand in the short run. Here is the aggregate supply in the short run. And so let's say that interest rates go down. Okay, the expansionary monetary policy, the way they would lower interest rates is they would buy bonds, right? The Fed would buy, the FOMC would buy bonds in the open market operation. As a result of interest rates going down, the economy grows, okay? The reason the economy grows is that investments go up, consumption goes up, so aggregate demand goes up, so GDP goes up. Okay? So interest rates go down. When interest rates go down, there is going to be a net capital outflow, meaning there's more money leaving the country than coming in because everybody's trying to run away from the lower interest rates. Okay? And in the foreign exchange market, where there is dollars versus, let's say, euros per dollar, there's going to be an increase in the supply of dollars because all these Americans want to leave. They want to invest in Europe instead or other countries. And the demand for dollars would go down. So the exchange rate would depreciate. And when the exchange rate depreciates, that makes our exports improve, which reinforces the increase in aggregate demand. Okay? So that's how monetary policy would work. And the opposite also, right? If the interest rate goes up, investment goes down, consumption goes down, aggregate demand goes down, the economy shrinks, there is an inflow, a net capital inflow. As a result, exchange rates appreciate, exports fall, and aggregate demand is reinforced in the other direction. Okay? The last item that I wanted to clarify is that whenever you have an increase in the economy, okay, so GDP increases, people have more money, okay, so they will buy more of everything, including imports. That means that whenever the economy grows, net exports fall. And if net exports fall, remember, the demand for dollars comes from foreigners demanding American goods or American assets. So if net exports fall, that means that the demand for dollars will fall and the dollar will depreciate. Okay? When the dollar depreciates, it counterbalances this current account deficit. In other words, whenever you start to buy more than you sell, the currency depreciates, and that encourages exports and discourages imports. So the exchange rate market counteracts or tries to counteract any deficits in the current account. Okay? So that's something to keep in mind. And by the way, when the economy shrinks, imports go down, which means net exports go up. When net exports go up, the demand for the currency increases, the currency appreciates, and that counters the effect of the change in net exports. Okay. Okay. That is all I wanted to say. We talked about purchasing power parity. Okay. Purchasing power parity says that real exchange rates in the long run have to equal to 1. Okay? Since the real exchange rate is equal to the nominal exchange rate times the domestic price over the foreign price, if that's going to equal to 1 in the long run, that's the implication of that is that in the long run, nominal exchange rates should be equal to the relative prices. Okay, so that if you have a country who has higher inflation, their exchange rate is going to be cheaper. Their money becomes cheaper. Okay, that was the idea of purchasing power parity. In the short run, purchasing power parity does not hold. In the long run, you trend toward purchasing power parity. Okay. Okay. Something I forgot to mention when we were talking about money. Okay. The money velocity equation. Okay. MV equals to PY. This is the amount of money in circulation. Price level, this is real GDP. Okay, so price times real GDP is nominal GDP. Okay, so velocity of money is nominal GDP divided by the money supply, which means if there's let's say they only printed $100 bills and there is $1,000 worth of purchases happening, each dollar bill is having to exchange hands many, many times. So velocity really is how many times a dollar changes hands, which again is a function of how many buyers and sellers there are, how many transactions are happening, divided by how many dollars have been printed. Okay? Typically, we assume that velocity is relatively constant. So if you look at this equation, you say if velocity is constant, then, and if real GDP is relatively constant, if let's say in the long run you're at potential, so that means that if you print more money, prices will go up. Okay? This is the quantity theory of money. Okay? All right, that's it. I hope this was helpful. We're going to try to reinforce these with doing exercises in class.